Most AAA games today all start to feel the same. Bigger maps, bigger budgets, better graphics, but somehow less soul. And honestly, I got tired of spending $70 on games that looked amazing in trailers, but felt empty after a few hours. But then I played some games that completely changed my standards forever. Games made with so much passion, immersion, and creativity that they genuinely made a lot of modern AAA titles feel embarrassing. These aren't just good games. These are the kind of games that stay in your head long after the credits roll. What's crazy is that some of these games weren't even the biggest releases of the year, but the moment I started playing them, I could instantly feel the difference. The atmosphere, the gameplay, the attention to detail, the emotions, everything just felt real. Some of these games completely pulled me into their worlds, and others reminded me why I fell in love with gaming in the first place. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll probably end up adding at least a few of these to your must-play list. I still remember going into Baldur's Gate 3 thinking it was just gonna be another good RPG, and then suddenly, I looked at the clock and realized I'd been playing for almost 10 hours straight without even noticing. That was the moment I realized this game was special. Every choice actually felt important. Every conversation felt alive. And the craziest part was how the game constantly reacted to the way I played. I wasn't just following quests. I felt like I was creating my own story every second. What hit me the hardest was the freedom. You could solve situations in completely insane ways, and somehow the game was always prepared for it. I can't even explain how many times I sat there shocked because something I thought would never work actually worked perfectly. The characters also felt incredibly real. By the end of the game, it honestly felt like I had gone on a journey with actual friends instead of NPCs. And compared to so many modern AAA games that hold your hand every second, Baldur's Gate 3 felt like a game that truly respected the player's intelligence. It reminded me what passion in gaming actually looks like. Elden Ring was one of those rare games that made me feel genuinely lost in the best way possible. The second I stepped into that world, I could already tell this wasn't going to be a normal experience. There was no constant hand-holding, no endless tutorials screaming at me where to go next. The game simply dropped me into this massive, mysterious world and basically said, good luck. And honestly, that feeling of discovery is something most AAA games today completely fail to capture. I still remember randomly finding hidden areas, secret bosses, and places that felt like they weren't even meant to be discovered yet. Every time I thought I had seen everything, the game surprised me again. But what made Elden Ring truly unforgettable for me was the atmosphere. There's this strange loneliness in the world that somehow makes every victory feel even bigger. Beating certain bosses after failing over and over again gave me a level of satisfaction that almost no modern game has managed to recreate. And when you compare that to so many big-budget games that feel safe and repetitive, Elden Ring honestly made a huge part of the industry look lazy. It trusted players to explore, struggle, and figure things out on their own, and that's exactly why it felt so rewarding. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 genuinely surprised me in a way very few modern games do anymore. From the very beginning, the world felt grounded and believable, instead of feeling like another copy-paste open world filled with meaningless activities. I still remember riding through forests at night with nothing but a torch, hearing distant sounds in the dark, and feeling completely immersed in the world around me. What hit me the hardest was how real everything felt. Combat wasn't just button mashing. Conversations mattered. Even simple things like preparing for a fight or traveling across the map felt important. And somehow, instead of making the game boring, it made every moment more intense and memorable. The moment I realized this game was on another level was when I caught myself slowing down just to absorb the atmosphere instead of rushing objectives. That almost never happens to me anymore in modern AAA games. A lot of big-budget titles try so hard to feel cinematic that they forget to make the world believable. But Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 absolutely nailed that feeling of living inside a real medieval world. It's the kind of game that pulls you in slowly, and before you realize it, you're completely obsessed.
That's the way. What are you doing? Cover!
Clair Obscur. Expedition 33 felt like one of those games that comes out of nowhere and completely catches you off guard. I went into it expecting something decent, but within a few hours, I was fully invested in its world, characters, and atmosphere. There was something about the art style and emotional tone that instantly pulled me in. The world felt beautiful, but at the same time strangely haunting, like every area had its own hidden sadness behind it. And honestly, that atmosphere stayed with me long after I stopped playing. What made the game stand out even more was how cinematic everything felt without losing the soul of an actual video game. Every fight had intensity, every moment felt meaningful, and the story constantly gave me that feeling of wanting to know what happens next. I still remember certain scenes that genuinely made me stop for a second because of how emotional or visually stunning they were. The moment I realized this game was something special was when I completely forgot about checking my phone, skipping dialogue, or rushing objectives. I was fully locked in, and compared to a lot of modern AAA games that rely only on graphics and hype, Clair Obscur felt creative, passionate, and unforgettable in a way that's becoming way too rare in gaming today. At this point, I started realizing something. The games that leave the biggest impact usually aren't the ones with the biggest marketing budgets. They're the games made with real passion, and the next few titles prove that even more. Black Myth. Wukong was one of those games that instantly made me realize how far gameplay and presentation can go when developers truly care about quality. The first thing that hit me was the sheer intensity of every fight. Every boss felt powerful, unpredictable, and cinematic without feeling fake or scripted. I still remember walking into certain battles thinking, there's no way I'm beating this, and then spending the next hour completely locked in, learning every move and refusing to quit. That feeling of finally winning after struggling for so long was honestly addictive, but what surprised me even more was the atmosphere. The world felt rich with mystery, mythology, and emotion in a way that made exploration genuinely exciting. Some moments looked so visually insane that I literally had to stop moving just to take everything in. And yet, despite all the graphics and spectacle, the game never forgot to actually be fun to play, which is something a lot of modern 8AA games struggle with now. The moment I realized Black Myth, Wukong was different, was when I stopped thinking about it like another action game and started feeling completely immersed in its world. It had style, soul, challenge, and passion all at once. And honestly, it embarrassed a lot of massive 8AA releases that spent years building hype but delivered far less memorable experiences. Hades completely reminded me why gameplay matters more than budget. On the surface, it looks like a smaller game compared to giant AAA releases, but the second I started playing, I couldn't stop. I'd tell myself, just one more run, and suddenly, hours had disappeared. That's when I knew this game was dangerous in the best way possible. What hit me the hardest was how every death actually made me more invested instead of frustrated. Most games punish failure so hard that you eventually get tired, but Hades somehow turned failure into motivation. Every run felt exciting because I knew I'd discover new dialogue, new story moments, or new combinations that completely changed how I played. And honestly, the characters carried so much personality that even returning to the hub area felt rewarding. I still remember getting attached to characters simply because the writing felt so natural and alive. The combat was another thing that genuinely surprised me. It was fast, smooth, satisfying, and every weapon completely changed the feel of the game. And when you compare that to so many expensive AAA games with repetitive gameplay loops, Hades felt more polished, more addictive, and honestly more fun than games with 10 times the budget. It proved that passion and smart design will always matter more than throwing money at graphics. Ghost of Tsushima was one of the few games that made me feel like I was living inside a movie without sacrificing the gameplay. From the very first ride across those open fields with the wind guiding me instead of annoying markers everywhere, I could already tell this game was built differently. I still remember reaching certain areas during sunset while the music quietly played in the background, and honestly, it felt peaceful in a way most games never achieve. But then the combat started and everything changed. Every sword fight felt intense, clean, and personal. There were moments where a single duel had me more focused than entire boss fights in other games. What hit me the hardest was how immersive the world felt without constantly trying to overwhelm you. The game trusted its atmosphere, visuals, and small details to pull you in naturally, and it worked perfectly. The moment I realized Ghost of Tsushima was special was when I stopped fast traveling completely because I genuinely enjoyed moving through the world. That almost never happens to me anymore. And compared to so many AAA open-world games filled with repetitive filler content, Ghost of Tsushima felt focused, emotional, and crafted with actual care. It reminded me that open-world games don't need to be bloated to feel unforgettable. Helldivers 2 honestly felt like pure chaos in the best possible way. The first few minutes already told me this game was different because instead of trying to be overly serious or cinematic all the time, it focused on something a lot of AAA games forget nowadays: making the game insanely fun. I still remember dropping into missions with complete panic everywhere, explosions going off non-stop, teammates screaming for help, and somehow all of it creating some of the funniest and most intense gaming moments I've had in years. What made the game so addictive for me was how unpredictable every mission felt. Things could go wrong instantly, and those unexpected disasters usually became the most memorable moments. 1 second, everything feels under control, and the next, your entire squad is fighting for survival while absolute madness unfolds around you. But beneath all the chaos, the gameplay felt incredibly polished and satisfying. Every weapon had impact, teamwork actually mattered, and the action never slowed down. The moment I realized Helldivers 2 was embarrassing a lot of AAA games was when I noticed how effortlessly it kept me entertained without needing a massive open world or endless filler content. It simply focused on delivering fun, replayable gameplay, and honestly, that's something way too many big-budget games have forgotten how to do. At this point, it became impossible not to notice the pattern. The games that truly stand out aren't always the ones spending the most money. They're the ones giving players experiences they genuinely can't stop thinking about.
100 meters. Got a sample!
Requesting advanced weaponry.
Sekiro. Shadows Die. Twice completely changed the way I look at difficulty in games. Before playing it, I thought hard games were just about bigger enemies and unfair mechanics. But Sekiro felt different. Every fight felt like a test of focus, patience, and pure skill. I still remember getting destroyed by certain bosses for hours straight, to the point where I almost quit, but the moment everything finally clicked was one of the most satisfying feelings I've ever had in gaming. What hit me the hardest was how perfectly the combat flowed once you understood it. It stopped feeling like random chaos and started feeling like an actual duel where timing, rhythm, and confidence mattered more than anything. And honestly, no other game has made me feel that level of adrenaline during combat. Every sword clash sounded powerful, every victory felt earned, and every mistake felt like my fault instead of bad game design. The moment I realized Sekiro was on another level was when beating a difficult boss felt more rewarding than finishing entire AAA games. That's how impactful it was. While so many modern AAA titles try to make players feel powerful instantly, Sekiro forced me to improve, learn, and adapt. And because of that, the experience stayed with me way longer than most games ever do. Cyberpunk 2077 is honestly one of the biggest comeback stories I've ever seen in gaming. I still remember the early launch disaster and how so many people completely gave up on it, including me for a while. But when I finally came back to the game later, it genuinely shocked me. The world of Night City felt alive in a way that very few open-world games have ever managed to achieve. Driving through the city at night with the neon lights everywhere, music playing in the background, and random conversations happening around me felt incredibly immersive. There were moments where I completely forgot I was even playing a game because the atmosphere pulled me in so hard. But what really made Cyberpunk 2077 special for me was the emotional side of the experience. Certain characters felt so real and memorable that by the end of the story, it honestly felt difficult saying goodbye to them. What hit me the hardest was how personal the journey started to feel the deeper I got into the game. The moment I realized Cyberpunk had become something truly great was when I caught myself thinking about its world, even after turning the game off. And compared to so many modern AAA games that play everything safe, Cyberpunk 2077 eventually became the exact opposite. It felt ambitious, emotional, immersive, and unforgettable in a way most big-budget games only promise in trailers, but never actually deliver. Gaming feels different when developers take risks, build worlds with passion, and create experiences that actually stay with players. And every game on this list did exactly that. These weren't just polished games with pretty graphics. These were the kind of experiences that reminded me why I fell in love with gaming in the first place. Some of them made me emotional, some completely addicted, and others raised my standards so high that a lot of modern AAA games just don't hit the same anymore. And honestly, that's what makes gaming special. Every once in a while, a game comes along that completely pulls you into its world and makes you forget about everything else for a while. So now I want to know your pick. Which game made modern AAA games look embarrassing for you? Drop it in the comments because I'm definitely curious to read your choices. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe because there are still so many incredible games we need to talk about.